He is innocent. I don't expect him to be arrested again.
Now, who is this guy? Who is Michael Gaine that they would do this for him, huh? Who is he?
Hello and welcome to an unusual edition of Shattered Lives. I'm here in Michael O'Toole's car and we're on our way down to Kenmare and Tralee, where we're doing a special podcast on the murder of Michael Gaine. Mick, how are you?
I'm grand. I'm looking forward to this. I'm quite excited and nervous at the same time because we don't know what we're going down here to get. We're aiming for certain things. We might get nothing, and that adds to the pressure and it adds to the intensity of our job. So it's a sort of love-hate relationship I have with this bit of the job, because we might get nothing, we might get everything, and we just don't know.
We're standing here opposite the farmland of Michael Gaine, who vanished from here on the 20th of March this year. This is an area called Mall's Gap, Carrick East, just outside of Kenmare town. Michael went missing from here. Friends of his called to the land looking for him and could find no sign of him. It sparked what is probably arguably the biggest and most baffling murder case in modern memory, really. His Jeep was discovered here, a RAV4 Jeep, on the 20th of March. And what was highly unusual about that was that his wallet and his phone were found inside, but there was no sign of Mike. We now know that his remains lay only feet away from where the car was discovered, but it would be some time before that horrific discovery happened.
So as Paul says, the investigation began on the 20th of March. Almost 2 months later, on the 16th of May, there was a really shocking development at this very farm where Mr Gaine had been working. Friends and family had been looking after Mr Gaine's farm after his disappearance, and on that date, a couple of family friends were spreading slurry on his sprawling farmland. Suddenly, the machine used to spread the slurry stopped. There was a blockage in it. The people using the machine went and investigated, and to their horror, they found what they thought were human remains. That precipitated Gardaí coming to the area, locking the whole farm down, and carrying out a massive search lasting several days, when Mr Gaine's remains were found, firstly spread out over the land, but then in a more concentrated search of this shed behind us. There's a slurry tank in there, and that's where they found the vast bulk of Mr Gaine's remains. We know it by now, the remains had been dismembered.
So we're walking past the land now, just kind of getting a feel for the area, and it's really, this is a beautiful piece of land. It's a 1,000-acre farm, and it really makes you think about the size of the search. They literally searched the length and breadth of this, didn't they?
And it's November now, but when we were here, it was May, and it was lovely summer's days. Mm-hmm. There was a whole big media circus here. All the cars were parked on this side of the road. Yeah. There was a significant search inside. We had the Garda Water Unit, we had the Defence Forces, we had the Civil Defence, we had the local firefighters, we had obviously Gardaí, and we had volunteers.
250 volunteers came out and searched every part of this land, the ravines, the mountainous terrain, bogland, seriously dense grass there you can see. They literally combed the area twice over. And
I think the fact that there were so many volunteers, I think, shows the esteem and affection in which Mr Gaine was held in his community. He was an integral part of this community, and people wanted to find him, and they came out to find him in their droves.
They did, and there was an awful lot of conversation, I remember, about how unusual it was to have a search of that kind of scale. And we didn't know all the facts from the get-go, but when you think about the fact that his wallet and his phone were found in the Jeep, and his friends and his family were saying he's not suicidal, this is unusual, he wouldn't just leave his things. From the get-go, there was a concern that, that there was possibly foul play here. Obviously, they were also probing the possibility of an accidental death or something of that nature. And when you look at the kind of terrain there, it's quite possible that you could fall or possibly fall into a slurry pit or into a hole, or, trip up and hurt yourself, so any possibility.
Do you remember when he disappeared? I think I was going on a job abroad, and you were doing the story, and I was speaking to somebody who said, this really looks suspicious. But I think the guards were being a bit more cautious. So I think weren't we the first paper to say there are fears that there were foul play
Yeah.
in Mr Gaine's disappearance, and then it just really exploded from there, didn't it?
And we went with that on the basis of the fact that we knew from, friends of Mr Gaine who came here and searched on the 21st, when the wallet and the phone were in the car, they said, that is unusual, something different has happened here. And we knew from our sources, they were saying, look, this is a strange one.
And I can still remember we were given guidance, and we weren't told specifically that it was his wallet and it was his phone, but we were told that there were very important personal items found in the car.
We know just in terms of the facts of this, and we came down here, you remember those first couple of days, they were searching the length and breadth of this land, and they emptied specifically the slurry tank that we now know was only, and we were told this just by somebody who, okay, they don't want to go on the record, but they've reliably informed us that only 20 yards from the car that tank was there, and they emptied that out, they drained it out, and they found nothing of substance. They didn't realise that there was, or did think that there was anything there at that point. And we're talking in the first 48 hours there.
I think we'll have to contextualise this. Yes, but they were looking, it was a missing persons case. Now what we know is the local firefighters who knew Mr Gaine were involved in this. So you're right, the slurry tank was drained, but there was about, I don't know, maybe a foot, 2 feet of sludge, because that's what it is. So all the liquid is drained, but it was left as sludge. And what the firefighters did, and it's their standard procedure, they used long poles to go around the sludge, really. But they were looking for a body. Now, this is where it gets a bit gruesome. Unfortunately, probably by that stage, Mr Gaine had been dismembered, and there was nothing really for them to find because there was no body.
And they didn't, to be fair, suspect something on that scale at that point.
No.
But we now know that it seems the most obvious anyway answer is that his remains were there the entire time and that they were missed. The other, perhaps maybe more chilling possibility here is that the remains were not there in those first 48 hours and that somebody subsequently moved the dismembered remains into that tank during the course of the 7 weeks in which there was a Garda presence on this land and people were actively searching. If that's the case, that's far more disturbing because it means somebody acted in plain sight and moved the remains. I'd say that's highly unlikely, but there are huge questions, aren't there, over those first couple of weeks and how the investigation was handled.
Yeah, and we know there is a review into it. Look, it is possible that that happened, but it's more likely that he was there the whole time, that he was probably killed on the 20th of March. Whatever way the killer dismembered Mr Gaine and then put it in that tank. And for me, for understandable reasons, the focus was, we know that, as you say, Paul, it's a 1,000-acre farm. Look at the hills, look at the land here. Hundreds of people were out searching for him, but they were searching for a body. I don't think anybody would have realistically thought at that stage this man has been killed and dismembered and dumped in his own tank.
On the 29th of April, Gardaí upgraded this investigation in a rare move without a body to a murder investigation. They called it a homicide investigation at that point in time. And they called a press conference, didn't they? And it was an unusual 24 hours.
Yes, so on the 29th of April, when the case was upgraded to homicide, coincidentally, the much lamented Mick O'Neill, our colleague, and I were in Kerry in Killarney for the annual conference of the Garda Representative Association. On the 30th, we got news that there was going to be a press conference in Kenmare, which is that way. We came this way from Killarney. We were passing the scene and we stopped and we got out. There was quite a bit of media here at the time because the case had been upgraded to homicide. And we were down at the entrance to the farm when Mick, God bless his hearing, he heard chopping sounds. And he very quickly put two and two together. And I saw Mick walking up this way and he stopped about here and he got his big long lens out and he started snapping and he got that now famous photograph of Michael Kelley over here chopping wood with the big long massive axe. And it really is an iconic photograph.
At that point in time, we knew about the existence of the so-called Yank. A lot of people had talked about the Yank, the American man who lives on the land with Michael Gaine. And we didn't even know his name at that point. Very few knew his name. We'd heard that this individual was living on the land and that he was the only other person who would have been on the land and possibly the last person to have seen Michael Gaine alive. So naturally you think he's possibly a suspect in this case. But also interestingly, as we're standing here, just I'm going to point to it, the house across from us there, that little green house, that outhouse, we understand is the place that Michael Kelley resided in. So we know this from speaking to Michael Kelley subsequently. According to him anyway, and he's the only account we can take in relation to this, he met Michael Gaine 3 years ago. He said he was canvassing farms and looking for work and for places to stay, and he came here roughly 3 years ago, and Michael Gaine, in the goodness of his own heart, let him in and let him do a bit of work for him. Basically, as a form of payment, he could live there in that outhouse, and that's where he was.
And there were a lot of rumours about Mr Kelley before he was arrested and before he was named when he spoke to you. One of the funny things was, there was a rumour that he was a former Special Forces officer.
Yeah.
He wasn't, as you found out, he was a private, he was a guard, wasn't he really?
Yeah, I mean, he downplayed his military role. He said that he was a private in the US Army, that he briefly was abroad in Germany, and that he left the US Army as a conscientious objector over the I think it was the first war in Iraq, the Gulf War. So that was his kind of military involvement. But we didn't know all this in the early days. We only knew there was this American man, this mysterious American man who lived on the land, and that he was possibly the last person to have seen Michael Gaine alive. I think what's bizarre about this, and again, you have to think about the fact that up until the 29th of April, it was a missing persons case. And so this wasn't a crime scene as such, and people, the civil defence forces and members of the community were all over this land, searching it top to bottom. And Michael Kelley was still in that house, going about his work, acting like it was just a normal day. And he wasn't really actively involved in the search. He kind of was just going about his business with the Gardaí sort of kind of just keeping an eye.
And one of the interesting aspects is a superintendent, the local superintendent in Kenmare, has to declare this a crime scene. And that's what happened in Mr Kelley. After when the remains were found, it was declared a crime scene and Mr Kelley left the area and Gardaí sealed it off. But before that, you can't just willy-nilly declare something a crime scene. It has to be the superintendent. He can do it for 24 hours. After that, you have to go to court for 48 hours and then the High Court and that sort of stuff. So it's not just, a Garda cannot just flick a switch and say it's a crime scene. There are things that has to be done. But I just want to talk very briefly about this being upgraded from a missing person to homicide, as they called it. I thought that was very interesting because it happened very quickly. If you think of other cases, say Deirdre Jacob, that case, she went missing in 1998, and it was only a couple of years ago that it was upgraded to homicide. And there have been several other cases. They've been a long time, but it seems as if the Gardaí are acting much more quickly nowadays and going, right, I'm of the belief, the senior investigation officer goes, I'm of the belief this man has been killed, and they upgraded it very, very quickly, really within a matter of weeks.
Following the upgrading of this investigation, another highly unusual step was taken by Gardaí, in which they went and they did a piece to camera, an interview with Janice Gaine, the wife of the victim here, Michael Gaine, an appeal for information, a heartbreaking appeal, and his sister Noreen O'Regan as well was part of that. And that was issued to all media. It was a piece to camera, effectively a public appeal by the wife and sister of Michael Gaine.
So essentially what happened that day, after Mick got these photographs, we decided to leave here. We'd got what we needed here, and we headed to Kenmare because the press conference was taking place. Now, on the way, we became aware that there might be an appeal from Mrs Gaine. So we got there. Superintendent John Ryan, who is one of the superintendents in this division, he came out, read a prepared statement, and then shortly after that, the appeal by Miss Gaine and Mr Gaine's sister was released to the media.
If there is anybody that has any information about Michael, do please come forward and talk to the Gardaí.
So the next significant thing that happened, obviously the most significant development, was the discovery of the remains on the 16th of May. And obviously that is just over 2 weeks after the investigation was upgraded from a missing persons investigation to a homicide investigation.
It was a very significant day. I remember it was a Friday, typical Friday evening, not much happening. And suddenly word started to percolate out that there had been an incident at the farm. And we sort of heard about the slurry tank, or people spreading slurry. When stories like this emerge, the whole story is not there at once. So we have to do an awful lot of researching. We have to make panicked phone calls and trying to talk to somebody to get what we know. So we knew that, I think we were told tissue had been found. And the big question was, is it human tissue or could it be animal tissue? So I think very late that night, we got confirmation, or we made a call to say it's human tissue.
Yeah.
And that brought it up to a whole new level because look, it could have been part of an animal or something. But once we were confident and secure in our sources that it was human remains, then that was a game changer really in relation to this story.
It was. And when I suppose the penny dropped that the remains were found in the very slurry tank that had been searched, the one we mentioned earlier, in the first 48 hours, it had been drained, and supposedly now the remains were there in this tank. And the only reason they went back and looked in that tank was because, as you alluded to earlier in the introduction, that family friend was here spreading the slurry on the land, and a bone, some sort of piece of human remains, got stuck in the machine that was spreading the slurry, and they realised that the horror discovery that they had come across the remains. But there's a lot of questions to this, isn't there? And I suppose one of the questions is possibly answered just by the virtue of the fact that the investigation was upgraded. Because you think about the fact that a missing persons investigation, the resources on a missing persons investigation are far different to those of a murder investigation. And when you've got, forensic officers in particular, they're looking for something different, and it was a fresh pair of eyes.
Yes, so when it's a missing person case, effectively it's local Gardaí. When it's a murder case, there are much more resources, including what the guards call national units. So there's the National Bureau of Criminal Investigation who are involved in every murder case. It's a local investigation, but they bring their expertise and their knowledge to bear to help local Gardaí. The reason the water unit was brought in is because they're specially trained divers, and they have the skills, experience and equipment to search that slurry pit. We know that the first find was on the Friday. On the Saturday, I'm sad to say, bits of remains were found in various parts of various fields because the slurry had been spread. And unfortunately, Mr Gaine's remains were in the slurry. But then the focus quickly switched to the slurry tank in the shed itself, and that's where most of the remains were found. And it was over, I think it was about a week really before the vast bulk of his remains were found.
So it was only 2 days after the discovery of those remains that they decided to arrest the chief suspect in this case, Michael Kelley. And as I said, he had been living here on this land, but they had made the decision to move him, and they subsequently arrested him on suspicion of murder, brought him to Killarney Garda Station, and he was quizzed for 24 hours. The only reason we can name Michael Kelley, as people might know, is because he identified himself as the suspect in the case when we went and approached him only a couple of days after, 2 days after he had been released without charge, and a file is still not gone to the DPP. But
I was down here when he was arrested. We were in Killarney Garda Station, and the man, Mr Kelley, we didn't know his name, we couldn't name him at that stage, so it was just the suspect or the prisoner. Under the law, he can be held for 24 hours. So we were down one day, waiting the next day, and it was a question of, it was late at night, and it was a question of, is this man going to be released, or is the DPP going to direct the charge? In relation to murder, it's the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecutions, who directs the charge, not Gardaí. Gardaí present their evidence, what they have, to the DPP, and then he or she makes the decision. So it was late on that night. There was a good media pack there, and suddenly a car went in the back way. Our photographer, Mick, was at the front. I ran around the back with a couple of other media. Car reversed in really close to deadline. I think it was at about 11:15, and the door opened at the side of the Garda station, and this person, I think he was covered up from memory, had a blanket over his head or something, and it was like a 2 feet jump, and he just jumped into the back of the car. Guards drove him off. Extraordinary, really, isn't it? It was just a mental couple of hours to cover all of that. And you don't know whether you're going to, end up with a charge or not, and what exactly is going to happen. Up to that point, Michael Kelley was afforded anonymity, as would anybody, but we had an interest in tracking him down, and we made the decision to go down to Tralee and doorstep him there in Tralee where he was residing. So, you'll see
over the course of this podcast, we did travel to Tralee, and there's a section of it where we'll talk to you about our attempts to speak to Michael Kelley, but I've had the opportunity to interview him a couple of times, and I'm sure we'll speak about that. But I found it interesting. I just think it's worth talking about here a little bit, because one of the things that he said to me was, because I wanted to get his insight into what it was like to be sitting in that house and to be chopping wood or whatever and going about his business whilst watching Gardaí and civil defence and people searching the land. And I was asking him about what he was observing, and he had a lot to say about that in particular, and about the tank. So he said that tank was drained. He said it was by fire officers, and they washed it down, he said. So he was surmising to me, and this was before the remains were identified. They hadn't been identified at that point. He said, those are the property of Michael Gaine. I'm not saying they are Michael Gaine. And he was trying to kind of give me this conspiracy theory that perhaps the remains were not those of Michael Gaine. Of course,
who else could they be?
Yeah. It was a strange thing to say. That's the thing that he said to me when I approached him in Tralee. But he was quite annoyed about the discovery of those remains and the manner in which they were discovered, and was implying, and it could be possible, that those remains were not there in the first week. How could they have gotten there 7 weeks later? And he was trying to say that there must be some sort of cover-up. There must be some explanation as to why the remains were found now, 7 weeks later, and why I'm being pinned for this. And he said that he was being framed, and that he was effectively the scapegoat, and he was being stitched up, I suppose, by the Gardaí or whatever. He was trying to say that he was the wrong guy, the fall guy here, because he was just wrong place, wrong time.
He would say that, wouldn't he?
He would say that, and look, he's afforded innocence until proven guilty. But I would just say it's highly. I mean, look, people are entitled to all sorts of theories, but his theory about the remains, and ultimately when they were identified as being Michael Gaine, he did accept that they were the remains of Michael Gaine. He said he accepts that at face value, but he still says to this day that he has a lot of questions about how and when those remains were found. And it's interesting, we're talking about the arrest. Normally in an arrest process, right, what kind of questions would be levelled to you? What you know, in a formal interview?
Well, interestingly, they will have had to have said to him, I put it to you that you murdered Michael Gaine. In other words, they have to put the main allegation to him, which is that of murder. So they can ask him whatever questions they want. There's all these. Listeners and viewers may remember we interviewed former Detective Sergeant called Peter Woods in relation to Graham Dwyer. Fantastic interview. He was what was called the level 4 interviewer.
Yeah.
He trained Gardaí how to interview people. So the guards will not have got in there willy-nilly. They will have done the interview plan. So there's a rapport phase, and it ends with a challenge phase, which is the hard questions, putting the hard allegations to him, and we know that that's what happened in this case.
So in the course of the interview, he says that he was shown these photographs of this chainsaw, and it was put to him that, you know, effectively he was saying potentially that was used to dismember the remains in this case. And he laughed and scoffed at that and said to me over the phone in an interview, he said, you know, this isn't some Texas Chainsaw Massacre bullshit, is what he said.
The things the police said to me while I was in custody, some of the things they said indicated an extreme prejudice and an extreme bias.
Really? Okay.
Okay?
As though they were, you know, treating you like you were guilty?
Yes.
Okay. And they had no evidence to back that up, you're saying?
I have seen none, and the chainsaw thing is preposterous, or they would have charged me. It is preposterous.
Okay.
I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre bullshit. I mean, please. Preposterous.
Okay.
Without even a shred of physical evidence of his body.
Yeah.
To show you, me, the media, listen, they had color glossy photographs of the chainsaw, and they had color glossy photographs of this, and they had color glossy photographs of that. I say, where the fuck is the color glossy photograph of anything having to do with Michael Gaine's body?
Make of that what you will, it's unusual. We now know that Gardaí are kind of moving away from the chainsaw theory, that but some sort of sharp instrument or instruments were obviously used to dismember the remains of Michael Gaine, however he may have been killed and in what circumstances, and when even. Yeah,
because there is a conspiracy theory that we mentioned there's a slurry pit or slurry tank in there, and that has an agitator which it agitates waste and stuff, and some people sort of claimed that the agitator could have dismembered Mr Gaine's body. Now, we've spoken to several farmers. What's their view?
Yeah, no, farmers have told us, I mean, even today I spoke to somebody local to here, and, you know, he said, no, look, that is just, an agitator would not do that to a body. I think there was an awful lot of hurt and angst, and, you know, you can imagine, like, this is very personal for a lot of people searching here, and when they realised they had missed this, you know, because the thought process is, and it's most likely that the remains were there the whole time, that when they realised that the remains were there the whole time, there's a lot of hurt and anger over that. But then they would say they were dismembered to, and I'm sorry, this is quite graphic, but they were dismembered to such a degree that it just wasn't possible to visibly see what was left.
And the poles that I mentioned earlier that the firefighters used to go through the sludge, that was looking for a body or significant body parts.
Yeah.
There's no way those poles would have found this, because they were very, very small parts.
Well, again, we're surmising this, but it's kind of an educated guess, I suppose. But all of this, all these questions have resulted in a review of this case that the Garda Commissioner announced in June. And I thought that was extraordinary in and of its own right. Like, this is probably, arguably, the biggest murder investigation in the country right now. It's still ongoing. No one has been charged. And in the middle of the investigation, the Commissioner has ordered a review of the case, which you have to think has slowed everything right down. But that's the kind of state of things as we stand here now today. Michael Kelley is still residing in Tralee, although we've discovered he's not where we thought he was. He's a free man. Nobody has been charged in relation to this murder. And it remains a mystery as to exactly how and even when Michael Gaine died, somewhere in and around the 20th. I want to mention, we will come back to Michael Kelley, but, you know, I did ask him about the 20th, and what little he told me about the 20th is, he says, in his words, that Michael Gaine came over to him and said, I have to go out now to meet some people. That's what he said. And that was his last interaction with him, he says, before the following day he learns, as he says, that he was actually missing.
You make a very valid point, Paul. This investigation is ongoing. Now, I can say with some confidence that people like me and you, journalists, know very little about what's going on behind the doors of this investigation. We very, very rarely do. So, you know, some people think that some people would guide you that progress is being made in this, but there is a very tight clamp on information coming out, and that's always the way. We very rarely get to hear what's going on in the real world. I've been at cases before where, you know, you think nothing's happening, and then suddenly somebody is charged and appears in court. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Mr Kelley. I'm saying that the investigation's ongoing and there is a level of confidence within Garda.
We have had some indication, haven't we, in making our inquiries for this podcast documentary, that there does seem to be some progress. What exactly that means in terms of the timeline of if and when something might happen, but we definitely have got an indication that although things seem to have slowed down, they haven't stopped investigating this, and they're just, I suppose, biding their time. But there's been an awful lot of conspiracy theories about what happened here. And as I said, we're not privy to everything, but what we do know, what we do believe, is there is only one suspect in this case. So whatever about other theories that are out there, Gardaí are only focused on, as far as we understand it, one suspect in this case. We don't know the motivation for this murder. It could be as simple as, you know, just a falling out, an argument, a spur of the moment, who knows. Whoever carried out this murder then went about the callous process of dismembering the remains, which wouldn't have happened, you know, in a matter of minutes. That would have taken hours. And then we know that they disinfected and cleaned the scene, and they had time to do that. So whoever did all of that, look, what kind of mindset do you have to be? What kind of person do you have to be to do that to a human being? I'm joined here by Pat Mann, who's a very esteemed solicitor, and appreciate his time speaking to us. Pat, you are representing Michael Kelley, who, you know, we have referred to as the suspect in this case, the murder of Michael Gaine, and he has admitted himself that he was arrested on suspicion of this murder. Can I ask you first, how is your client doing, and how is he coping?
Well, he's doing pretty well. He's living here in Tralee, and he calls in now to me for casual conversations and chats and things like that. He's getting on fine. He's okay.
So So he comes in just for a general conversation?
Yeah,
even?
well, we see we don't have anything else to discuss, really.
Right.
Yeah, you quite rightly said there that he had been arrested back that time in Killarney on suspicion of being involved in that incident. And we were able to establish it had nothing to do with him.
Right.
And with the result that that's sort of that.
Okay.
So he left that area down around South Kerry where he was living and moved to Tralee at the time.
Okay.
So with the result that I'm from Tralee, he was living down near Kenmare, and he moved up here. And so we had that kind of physical contact. He didn't really know anybody else.
Right.
So he just came in now to me, and I kind of tried to help him with the streets and the shops and that sort of stuff, you know.
Were you in the Garda station with him for the interview?
No, I was in the Garda station, but it's my practice not to sit in on interviews except in the rarest of circumstances. I didn't think there was any basis for the arrest. And that subsequently has been borne out.
What was the basis for the arrest? Did they explain?
Well, no, he was arrested on suspicion of having been involved in the death of that man, and he was interviewed about it, and quite clearly they must have thought that they must have, as a result of the interview, they must have reached the conclusion that he wasn't involved in it. Otherwise, they would have, which is the normal thing, they would have kept somebody, charged him, and brought him before a special court. He is innocent.
Yeah.
Tis the question of maintaining it. Tis like somebody, for example, judges regularly say to people in juries and things that somebody's entitled to the benefit of the doubt. Getting the doubt is not a benefit.
Do you think they have anything against him? You've basically said that there's nothing.
I don't think so, no.
Why?
No. I just instinctively feel there isn't. I just feel that if there was going to be something, so tis a while back now, I can't even remember. I have so much going on in my life as to how far back he was arrested. There's been nothing sure in the meantime. I'm answering your question. I don't expect him to be arrested again. And the arresting of a person a second time in relation to the same matter is an extremely hazardous road to go down for the prosecution. So they'd have to have something to go with, and I don't think they have anything to go with.
Look, I'm only asking you this because it's been reported and he's admitted it himself. He's an illegal immigrant in this country.
Yeah.
What is his status now? Is he trying to get Irish citizenship?
He is, yeah. He's in the course of applying for it, yeah. And he's doing it all himself.
Are you confident he'll get that?
Oh, I am, of course, yeah, based on the grandfather part of it. You know, you'll be automatically, or great-grandfather, you'll be automatically entitled, I think, if it is the grandfather, but you have to go a step further if it's a great-grandfather. He's actually, does a lot of research, he does a lot of work in the library.
Oh, does he?
Oh yeah, this is a very, very bright man. And he loves researching history and things like that. And sometimes when he wanders in to see me about something, we have a chat, it trips over into the area of history and all that kind of thing. So he's quite an intelligent man. I mean, he was just living down there. This other man unfortunately died in difficult, tragic circumstances. The Gardaí have a job to do. It's nothing to do with us. He's not being scapegoated, and he's not being framed per se. I mean, he's living openly. You know, he goes to the shops, and he was busking back along because he's quite a very talented Irish musician, believe it or not. He plays the flute and he plays other instruments as well. And I saw them in the flat when I caught the visit. And he lives openly, and he never makes any attempt like to hide himself for any reason.
So he's not hiding anything?
No, not at all. No.
Can I ask you why you've decided to change your mind? Why you don't want to talk?
No, I don't want to make any comment on it.
Locals have brought us to the alleged campsite of Michael Kelley. This is where we're told he lived for a period of time. It's not too far away from the actual land that he lived on with Mike Gaine. He eventually moved into a house over there, but we're told he lived here. There are important questions that we want to ask you, that we want to put on the record. You know, those are questions I've asked you some of those questions before. You know, you're innocent. You're saying you're innocent and that you're not guilty of this crime, and I just want to ask you that on camera. You know what I mean?
Listen, I don't see what's in it.